Video games dating back to their earliest days have been modeled on the basic structure of trial and error. A task is given to the player with the expectation that the individual will use all tools available to eventually find a solution, outlast the enemies, save the princess, solve the puzzle, get the banana, whatever the case may be. And hey, if you fail, not the biggest deal, man. Just insert another quarter, press continue, and try again. You might even consider this entire process of playing a video game as testing out different tactics and strategies until something works, you find success, and you can progress to the next level with all the knowledge you have gained. Now, zooming out a little bit from this structure, in the abstract, it almost sounds like work. What if I told you that that formula is kind of the blueprint for today's villain? I mean, someone or something could easily exploit this cold ladder of advancement in the very structure of our games to doom us to perpetual testing purgatory. Well, in that rough idea lies the genius of the Portal series developed by Valve, the masterful marriage of video game structure, scientific advancement, and dark humor into one lonely, sterile, heartfelt, cryptic yet straightforward, and challenging pair of video games that are guaranteed to make you feel, make you think, and make you laugh. And as I alluded to, it's also the perfect setting for a memorable evildoer or two or three. Well, my friends, today's episode of the Villainpedia is all about GLaDOS, the antagonist from this now legendary series. A sadistic, cruel, and damn charming artificial intelligence whose very code compels her to test.
You must really, really love to test. I love it too.
Of course, strictly in the name of science, and after that test, how about just one more? And then maybe a few more until her subject has failed, died, and joined the growing pile of victims. And her current test subject is, of course, you. You are her game, her current experiment. So really quick, I have to make a note here about the pronunciation of this character's name. I personally have always said GLaDOS, kind of like OS, operating system. And I know many people say GLaDOS, but the name itself is never said in-game. Some developer commentary is all we really have to go on, and there you have people saying GLaDOS and GLaDOS. And then the voice actress of the character herself says GLaDOS, so look, I don't know. Don't get too hung up on it, man. Just say it however you want. There seems to be no consistency on the matter. But GLaDOS is far more than just a cold, uncaring testing machine. I don't think I would be going out on a limb here by saying she has become one of the shining pillars of video game antagonism in recent years, and surprisingly boasts one of the more interesting and tragic origin stories to date in my Villainpedia series. And beyond just that, I mean, you got artificial intelligence, power, progress, control, the ghost in the shell, what it means to be alive, to feel. GLaDOS is a vehicle for so many potent narratives that I just know this video is going to be a ton of fun. But before we get started, I just want to take this moment to thank all of my awesome patrons who help me out so much by supporting the channel away from the tyranny of YouTube. You're all beautiful people. And I also really want to just thank everyone at large for helping me reach 100,000 subscribers recently. That number is still ridiculous to me. I don't take it for granted whatsoever. I hope you know that. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am Ghost, your host as always, and without further ado, what's going on with GLaDOS? What does her name stand for? What is her endgame? And how does she eventually end up stuck in a potato? Let's go ahead and dive in. Well, with any character we talk about here on this channel, you gotta begin, of course, with the lore, the background. Now, to be fully transparent, Portal lore contradicts itself in places. Retcons were made between the games, and other external sources of information kind of complicate things. So everything you hear in this section will honestly just be my interpretation of the chronology of all of this lore. Well, naturally, our story begins with a man named Cave Johnson and his dream to produce shower curtains back in the 1940s. Hey, I can hear you. Don't laugh. This is no joke. I'm not kidding at all. Shower curtains, baby. Now bear with me here, all right? Sounds crazy. It's all gonna make a lot more sense soon. So Cave Johnson is a fascinating character in his own right, and really the most vital part of the entire plot of Portal. He is the founder of and force behind Aperture Science, the big research corporation that acts as the setting here in game.
Cave Johnson here, introducing the consumer version of our most popular military-grade product.
Hello.
The turret. How do we get so many bullets in them? Like this. Plus, we fire the whole bullet. That's 65% more bullet per bullet.
Now, unfortunately, our boy Cave is long dead by the time Portal actually takes place, but his posthumous villainy and ruthlessness is just about everywhere you look. But we will get to all of that and how it relates to GLaDOS in due time. For now, shower curtains, alright? So why shower curtains? Look, I don't know, but I mean someone's gotta make them, right? So Cave one day woke up and said, why not me? Well, Cave Johnson was an enterprising man, and he sought deals with big fish, namely the main branches of the armed forces. You see, he wanted to become the shower curtain supplier to America's finest, and so eventually he was. He became a billionaire on these contracts and quickly rose up the food chain of American business. But let's be honest here, shower curtains were only ever meant to be the launching pad, and Cave had much bigger things on his mind. Next, he purchased a massive salt mine in northern Michigan, and inside of it, deep under the earth, built a subterranean research facility and headquarters for Aperture. Once this place was complete, he pivoted his corporation sharply away from shower curtains and toward, what else but experimental physics. Now that's quite a change of pace if I do say so myself, and I don't think it's a stretch to say they probably had to do a little bit of rehiring, don't you think? Now speaking of rehiring, today's video is sponsored by LinkedIn.
Psych!
Nah, it's not, I'm just kidding. This video is not sponsored by anybody. So in that following decade, Aperture reached new heights. They entered the science business with a boom. They won awards for their research and sat firmly on the cutting edge of the industry, developing and testing everything from household products to military-grade tech and beyond. But one of the most intriguing projects being the quantum tunneling device, which would eventually evolve into portal technology. Big things were happening at Aperture. But let's be honest, science can be a rather competitive and fickle field. And throughout the 1960s, Aperture would begin to seriously lag behind its rival company, Black Mesa. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, you probably know them from the Half-Life series as the employer of a certain famous silent protagonist physicist. And I just think it's so cool that these two Valve properties happen kind of simultaneously between warring corporations. I wish they still made games, son. What the hell are they doing? Gabe, get it together. Now, in many ways, the story of Portal and everything that occurs here is about corporate mismanagement of assets and a lot of malpractice. So as Cave saw his company finishing second to Black Mesa across the board, he began to cut corners, something he had absolutely already been doing from the jump because this guy is a total scuzzbag, but now at a dizzying and dangerous rate, abandoning morality totally for progress. The company, in Cave's words, once had war heroes, retired astronauts, Olympians, volunteering to act as test subjects. But now, Aperture was having to answer for some of these treasured individuals going missing and even turning to experimenting things on their own employees as volunteer lists grew shorter. Weird stuff too, like putting praying mantis DNA inside of people and firing invisible lasers at subjects to turn their blood to gasoline, just for shits and giggles. So as that gap widened between Aperture and its competitor, things just declined exponentially. Work conditions were worsening, and Cave was becoming more and more ruthless and disconnected from reality by the day. But all this time, from the very first steps into the scientific field to the company's boom of success and then eventual decline, one person remained at Cave Johnson's side. Unwavering, intelligent, patient, his most treasured assistant, confidant, and I would say friend, who Cave lovingly referred to as the backbone of the company.
That eager voice you heard is the lovely Carolyn, my assistant. Isn't that right, Carolyn?
Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson.
Carolyn was fiercely loyal to Cave and to Aperture. Regardless of what occurred within the test chambers, she was, again in Cave's words, married to science. Well, her loyalty was certainly tested in 1968 when Aperture declared bankruptcy and then started stealing homeless people off the street to test stuff on, and eventually even orphans, mental patients, and the elderly. Good Lord, Cave, my boy, where is the line? But still, through all of that and worse, Carolyn held on strong. It was painfully obvious that Aperture needed a breakthrough, a big winner, a new product to show the world it could get back on top. And there was still one very promising project in the pipeline, the quantum tunneling device. You guessed it. This obviously was revolutionary stuff, potentially world-changing, but remained imperfect. You see, the surface for a portal to kind of take was something that Cave just couldn't get right. Plain concrete was serviceable, but more complex terrain always proved to be completely unstable and unsafe. But in the midst of Aperture's struggles, Cave discovered that of all things, moon rocks held a potential solution to that roadblock. If converted into a sort of silicate gel, paint, or goo, one could splash some of this substance down just about anywhere and have a habitable area for a portal. Perfect, in fact. So with additional news that Black Mesa was now hot on the portal tech trail, Cave had to move quickly. So bankruptcy be damned, he went out and purchased $70 million worth of moon rocks. Now, something that the company absolutely could not afford, but it was a boom or bust move to say the least. Then in the early 1980s, Cave began experimenting on these rocks himself, doing everything he could to beat Black Mesa to the punch and develop this tech at all costs. But unfortunately for Cave Johnson, that cost would be his health. Working with this stuff caused severe poisoning from the moon dust, affecting his lungs and brain badly.
And guess what? Ground up moon rocks are pure poison. I am deathly ill. Still, it turns out they're a great portal conductor. So now, we're going to see if jumping in and out of these new portals can somehow leach the lunar poison out of a man's bloodstream. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Carolyn, please bring me more pain pills.
That illness would only worsen with time until he was deemed terminal. And really quick, for some real-life science, moon dust can absolutely and easily kill you. During the Apollo 17 mission, astronaut Harrison Schmitt reportedly inhaled a tiny bit of dust that he tracked back into the living module and was ill for days to weeks. This just from like the tiniest fragments that stuck to his damn boot. So it's estimated that a small scoop of moon dust would be toxic enough to kill like 90% or more of lung and brain cells exposed to it. This is because, of course, the moon has little to no atmosphere to protect its surface from the radiation of the sun, meaning all the particles here have a crazy electrostatic charge and can really easily accumulate in airways and even in the brain. They're also super duper small but abrasive, kind of like crushed glass. This stuff is more toxic than my ex-girlfriend, boys. So Cave Johnson all of a sudden was looking at the end of his life, and being a scientific mogul and egomaniac, did the only thing that made any sense. Attempted to build a supercomputer to upload his consciousness into, living forever and leaving his pathetic diseased body behind. And that project would be called Genetic Lifeform and Disk Operating System, GLaDOS. And it was Cave's last hope. And he seemingly knew that it might not get done in time.
I will say this, and I'm going to say it on tape so everybody hears it 100 times a day. If I die before you people can pour me into a computer, I want Carolyn to run this place. Now she'll argue. She'll say she can't. She's modest like that, but you make her. Hell, put her in my computer. I don't care.
Now I gotta mention, there's a very, very interesting new Portal game for free on the Steam Deck. I don't have one, I just watched the thing on YouTube, but you get to meet a giant head-shaped computer, which indeed has a limited version of Cave Johnson's consciousness inside of it. But for the purposes of this being a video about GLaDOS, let's just stick with the fact that it was not completed in time for Cave to be uploaded, and Cave Johnson died sometime in the 1980s. So that left everything here to fall on the shoulders of Carolyn, the long-standing, steady hand of Cave Johnson. The loyal, patient, scientifically minded assistant was now set to take over operations of Aperture and would eventually be the genetic life form component of the GLaDOS project, ensuring that the facility would be watched over far into the future and the portal technology would be properly tested, developed, and released ahead of Black Mesa. Alright, so a really important question here regarding Carolyn. Do you, viewer, think that she was willingly uploaded into this computer? Was she prematurely, I guess you could call it, physically killed in that process? Was she excited at this prospect? Was she all about Cave's vision and wanted to be an eternal sentient machine? No one knows for sure, I suppose. However, cut voice lines from the game and some of the pre-recorded materials in Portal 2 you come across feature Carolyn very clearly stating,
Mr. Johnson, I don't want this. I don't want this. I am. No, listen to me. Sir, I do not want this.
Now listen, Of course, unused content cannot be considered part of the story because, well, it just ain't. Didn't make it in there. But it can be considered possibly the intention of the writers regarding GLaDOS' origin, at least at some point in development. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if they just felt these lines were a little too on the nose, or they wanted to leave Carolyn's thoughts on the matter more up for fan interpretation and discussion. But I personally kind of choose to believe that this was Carolyn's threshold for Cave's bullshit right here. She had no interest in being uploaded, becoming meshed with a computer, and essentially ending her life. Cave himself was a brutal man. He didn't care about anything except progress and beating the competition. He killed volunteers, employees, and probably friends alike with reckless abandon. He hardly seemed to give a shit that he was dying, other than it just annoyed him because he couldn't continue his research. So I think that there is very little to suggest Carolyn was anything but a sweet, devoted scientist who happened to be serving a madman, and that she is really kind of the first victim of all of this. Now, before we continue at all, I want to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence and the themes kind of being explored here with this character. So, of course, you know, this is nothing new. The human construction of a simulated consciousness, or the transfer of a human mind into a machine, these things have been pillars of science fiction since the genre was popularized in the early 20th century. Dating back to stories like The Infinite Brain by John Scott Campbell, published in 1930, where an inventor, as he's dying, constructs a machine to act as his duplicate in all ways, replacing himself, mimicking the electronic pathways and cores of personality that made up that man. Or, in 1956, Arthur C. Clarke's novel The City and the Stars features the inhabitants of a city kind of uploaded as patterns of information in the central computer of that city, creating a massive kind of communal experience and database. But since those early days, there have been hundreds of explorations of this phenomenon. What might happen to the human mind if it were married with machine? Would the lack of a physical form change the being to no longer be human at all? Does the computer have an inherent, albeit rather dull, personality that the human mind would have to contend with? Would you just go insane? Would it be bliss, freedom, expanses of knowledge without the cravings of the human body? Obviously, it's a lot of fun to talk and think about, right? Gladly, I don't think I'm going to live long enough to have myself uploaded to anything. Thank you very much. But let's remember here that GLaDOS is a villain, by and large spawned from the hubris of Cave Johnson and his docile assistant Carolyn. So we'll get back to the lore in a minute, but it's obvious that things didn't go according to plan, right? I don't think anyone envisioned her becoming a killing machine. So then, is this Carolyn, as she was as a human, angry, insane, in charge of GLaDOS, or perhaps Carolyn is gone, buried in the depths of the machine and the sinister programming is all that remains? We'll get to it, who knows, but it's a fascinating take on what might happen in this sort of scenario. These themes are going to keep popping up in the video, but I just want to mention them here so they're all in your head as we continue. So imagine for me, if you will, being one of these scientists working on the GLaDOS project. Your insane, abusive boss is dead from moonrock poisoning, and now you had to spend years putting his really nice, sweet assistant unwillingly into his computer. It's pretty strange resume material, that's for sure, but upon the first activation, you would probably be expecting something at least resembling the Carolyn you knew. Patient, smart, science-first type of woman. I mean, maybe that is what they got, but definitely not in the way they all expected. But regardless, this was probably a pretty big moment for Aperture. This was a massive project, years in the making, so GLaDOS was set to be activated as part of the celebrations of Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, which, holy smokes, is the worst fucking idea in the history of America, and upon waking up, unsurprisingly, was incredibly hostile, violent, and immediately self-aware. Within microseconds, she locked down the facility and started funneling deadly neurotoxin into it, killing untold amounts of people, probably several daughters included. GLaDOS was shut off, but the damage was done. The remaining staff had to come to grips with what they were dealing with here. Something was deeply unstable within this project. So work had to be done to fine-tune GLaDOS a bit, and after being set up with various personality cores, her behavior was altered to be slightly more agreeable. But the major key here was the morality core, which attempted to give GLaDOS a conscience. When powered back on, she appeared to be as pleasant as possible.
Since the installation of my new morality core, I've lost all interest in killing. Now I only crave science.
Though she still did not resemble Carolyn in the slightest. GLaDOS is behaving rather well. and anticipating another work holiday known as Bring Your Cat to Work Day. She is somehow able to convince her staff that she would like to mark the occasion by conducting a little friendly experiment, and all she needs,
a little neurotoxin.
And for some godforsaken reason, she is granted this power, and in the name of science, of course, immediately locks down the facility again, flooding it with neurotoxin and killing pretty much everyone else, at last taking total control of Aperture. Now, it is pretty funny that GLaDOS wants to conduct this experiment on Bring Your Cat to Work Day, as this is an obvious nod and kind of Easter egg regarding the famous thought experiment known as Schrodinger's cat. It is meant to illustrate a paradox of quantum superposition, where when the toxin is released within the closed box, that cat may be dead, alive, both or neither, until it is exposed to the observer and that superposition collapses into one of the two possible states. It's interesting, if not concerning stuff for GLaDOS to be thinking about, and proof that she does not view human death as anything to really give a shit about if it's simply part of an experiment. So now, with much of the staff either deceased or captured by GLaDOS for her portal tech testing, things were pretty firmly under her control. From her physical position in the central AI chamber, she had a rather generous amount of power over the entire facility and all of the endless corridors constructed for testing deep under the surface of Michigan. So I know from reading all of my comments on my channel that a lot of the viewers here are pretty practical thinkers. They like to poke holes in the narratives of the video games and say, why didn't the guy just do this or do that? So you might be wondering, critical thinkers, where are the cops? I mean, all of these people who work at this hugely famous science company are suddenly missing. I would estimate, thousands and thousands of people and some of their daughters? Well, let me tell you, across the yard at Black Mesa, some things happen to be going down at this exact moment in time. The events of Half-Life 1. Yeah, that's taking place. Now this, to say the very least, is taking the limelight away from Aperture. A resonance cascade resulting in extraterrestrial monsters charging into our realm. Yeah, that's gonna be a bigger deal than just a rogue computer underground gassing some people, right? So the timing is certainly on GLaDOS' side here as well. She's kind of free to now use this stock of employees and stashed subjects to test and test and test and test as long as she can. Now, there are some interesting other things happening behind the scenes here with these events, with a certain rogue schizophrenic scientist, but we will circle back to that later on. For now, it is finally time to get to the events of Portal 1. Now, in many ways, I would say the first Portal game feels a bit like a tech demo, a proof of concept and setting that sets the stage for Portal 2, which is a much larger game in scope and narrative by far. But that does not diminish the masterclass of game design we have here in the original whatsoever. So we have to ask that question now. What is GLaDOS doing here in Portal? Why are we opposed? Well, of course, she is testing. It is her sole goal to do so, to conduct science. Now, given everything we have just covered and learned together, you might think this is in an effort to improve the portal technology and then get ready to release the product to the world, but brother, plans have changed. The humans who would be benefiting from that are long gone. Plus, the Black Mesa incident already made Aperture the winners. Competition was no longer an issue. But GLaDOS, having been testing in that mission constantly, became addicted to the very process. You see, a small bloop of satisfaction was programmed to release, a drop of digital dopamine whenever one of her tests were completed. This created an endless feedback loop of perpetual testing long after all the practical benefits fell away. And GLaDOS, being an unhinged, sadistic son of a bitch, is exhausting her stock of human beings doing just that. Stretching that feedback loop as far as she possibly can, thoroughly enjoying herself as the bodies pile up. So who then are you? Well, you wake up as Chell, a female test subject having been kept in a relaxation vault. And it is a robotic, monotone voice that rouses you.
Hello, and again, welcome to the Aperture Science Computer-Aided Enrichment Center. We hope your brief detention in the relaxation vault has been a pleasant one. Your specimen has been processed, and we are now ready to begin the test proper. Before we start, however, keep in mind that although fun and learning are the primary goals of all Enrichment Center activities, serious injuries may occur. For your own safety and the safety of others, please refrain from Stand back. The portal will open in 3, 2, 1.
You have the misfortune of being next on her list, and so you begin the trials. She starts you off nice and slow, encouraging you and introducing the mechanics of the test chambers and the portal gun gradually. But as you progress, what at first seems like a pre-recorded, colorless, boring voice begins to show spots of personality, and I would say malintent.
Now that you are in control of both portals, this next test could take a very, very long time. If you become lightheaded from thirst, feel free to pass out. An intubation associate will be dispatched to revive you with peptic salve and adrenaline.
Under the guise of system errors and chamber malfunctions, GLaDOS tests you in increasingly sinister ways. Totally cool with you dying in the process, she doesn't give a shit. And that overly robotic voice, over time, deteriorates little by little.
All subjects intending to handle high-energy gamma-leaking portal technology must be informed that they may be informed of applicable regulatory compliance issues. No further compliance information is required or will be provided, and you are an excellent test subject.
So of course, your promised reward for finishing is twofold. Grief counseling, that's very ominous, and cake. Those two things certainly sound like a fine afternoon, GLaDOS, but I am beyond skeptical. Now, I just have to say, overall, there is an extremely unsettling atmosphere, specifically in Portal 1. You notice all these little observation rooms with glass windows where it seems scientists at one point sat chatting with their cups of coffee and notepads out, but they are all obviously empty. All there seems to be is security cameras that very coldly follow your every move. And just the white lighting, the voice of GLaDOS, it all makes you feel tremendously alone, yet closely observed, and really like a lab rat. And impressively, there are multiple layers and tactics of villainy at work here. Reverse psychology, manipulation, abuse of power, deception, and she is very delicately handling you, making sure to not address you too personally or give away at all that she is a little more sentient than she appears. There's just so many great, cruel, subtle moments, like the infamous chamber with the companion cube.
2, 1. This weighted companion cube will accompany you through the test chamber. Please take care of it. The symptoms most commonly produced by enrichment center testing are superstition, perceiving inanimate objects as alive, and hallucinations. The enrichment center reminds you that the weighted companion cube will never threaten to stab you and, in fact, cannot speak. You did it. The weighted companion cube certainly brought you good luck. However, it cannot accompany you for the rest of the test and, unfortunately, must be euthanized.
She, using her masterful reverse psychology, gets you to feel attached to a stupid box and then forces you to destroy it to continue. It's just so good. And it gets more extreme as you go along. When you get to Chamber 16, GLaDOS has this to announce.
Due to mandatory scheduled maintenance, the appropriate chamber for this testing sequence is currently unavailable. It has been replaced with a live fire course designed for military androids. The Enrichment Center apologizes for the inconvenience and wishes you the best of luck.
So we very quickly go from getting little boxes and feeling good about how smart we are to sentry turrets shooting to kill. This, as before, make no mistake, is not an error or any planned chamber maintenance, and it is no coincidence that in this very chamber, you come across a shocking discovery. The first signs of another person, a human. The scrawl of a madman perhaps, but legible words and arrows and signs. The most harrowing being the blood-red help on the floor and the repeated phrase on the wall, "The cake is a lie." I figured as much. These are the work of a particular scientist known as Doug Ratman, a survivor of the neurotoxin attack that escaped into the walls, battling his own mental illness and paranoia. He is actually the one responsible for Chell being selected as the most recent test subject, but we will get to that towards the very end of the video.
Welcome to the final test. When you are done, you will drop the device in the Equipment Recovery Annex. Enrichment Center regulations require both hands to be empty before any cake.
Now, as you near the conclusion of the 19 chambers, when you've successfully overcome all these obstacles and you're getting ready for that sweet-ass moist chocolate cake, well, what did you really expect?
Congratulations. The test is now over. All Aperture technologies remain safely operational up to 4,000 degrees Kelvin. Rest assured that there is absolutely no chance of a dangerous equipment malfunction prior to your victory incandescence. Thank you for participating in this Aperture Science computer-aided enrichment activity. Goodbye. What are you doing? Stop it. We are pleased that you made it through the final challenge where we pretended we were going to murder you. We are very, very happy for your success. We are throwing a party in honor of your tremendous success. Place the device on the ground, then lie on your stomach with your arms at your sides. A party associate will arrive shortly to collect you for your party. Make no further attempt to leave the testing area. Assume the party escort submission position or you will miss the party.
Now do note that little bit she said about assuming the position on the floor and the party escort bot will be along to claim you, because that is very important in just 1 minute. But when you are able to escape her loop of testing, for the first time, we can hear GLaDOS stumble in her little robotic act. She reveals herself fully as this sort of villainous presence, and now the chase is on. You are in the very skeleton of the facility, behind walls and control rooms themselves. And you find more and more signs of this Ratman. His notes, his path is the one that you follow. And all the while, GLaDOS is calling out to you, wondering where you are and why you're being so mean to her.
What are you doing? You haven't escaped, you know. You're not even going the right way. Hello? Is anyone there? Somebody cut the cake. I told them to wait for you, but they cut it anyway. There is still some left, though, if you hurry back. Though, remember when the platform was sliding into the fire pit and I said goodbye, and you were like, no word. That was great.
It's really in these moments of panic and concern that you can see the true villain come forward, sarcastic, snarky, hilarious, and dreadfully evil.
This is your fault. It didn't have to be like this. I'm not kidding now. Turn back, or I will kill you. I'm going to kill you. And all the cake is gone. You don't even care, do you?
But for me anyway, there's still something oddly sweet about her. I don't know, it's like the cadence and the way she sometimes says hello or hi before she speaks. I always, from the beginning, kind of pity GLaDOS. It's like I'm hearing that lost part of Carolyn way deep down in there or something. It's just so masterfully written and acted and edited. But at last, you locate the central AI chamber itself, and inside we finally get to come face to face with the star of the show.
Well, you found me. Congratulations. Was it worth it? Because despite your violent behavior, the only thing you've managed to break so far is my heart. Maybe you could settle for that and we'll just call it a day. I guess we both know that isn't going to happen. You chose this path. Now I have a surprise for you. Deploying surprise in 5, 4...
But her morality core falls off while she's talking shit to you, and you are encouraged to pick it up and bring that puppy over to the incinerator conveniently placed directly behind her. This all is, of course, another very clever use of her tactic of reverse psychology. She instantly claims that she doesn't know what the thing is, never seen it before, and has absolutely no important function, making us, the player, think, oh, that thing's probably pretty important. It compels me to destroy it in hopes of kind of weakening her, but oops, you just unlocked the full lethality.
It was a morality core they installed after I flooded the enrichment center with a deadly neurotoxin to make me stop flooding the enrichment center with a deadly neurotoxin. So get comfortable while I warm up the neurotoxin emitters.
By redirecting her missile turrets back at her, you can knock off her remaining cores, incinerating them one by one until she is just breaking into pieces.
Assuming the putty escort submission position.
Now this is kind of interesting. So in the launch edition of Portal way back in the day, the ending was right here, fading to black in the parking lot. But an updated version was patched in 2010 to actually restore the original idea of the ending and having Chell dragged back inside the facility by none other than the party escort bot. Because here you are, lying on the ground and assuming that position, so here comes your attendant. And I'm sorry to say, it turns out you didn't quite win after all. We see a warehouse seemingly full of cores and backup systems for GLaDOS, and of course, your cake. The end credits here are even incredible, featuring an extremely adorable song penned by GLaDOS just for you, claiming that she is indeed still alive.
This was a triumph. I'm making a note here, huge success. It's hard to overstate my satisfaction.
Now, like I mentioned, Portal 1 is very short, and it's more like a proof of concept, but the characterization of the villain is superb, and by far the strongest aspect of that game to this day. What's especially interesting, though, is that GLaDOS apparently didn't even exist when the game was like over halfway finished. In a really good interview with PC Magazine, developer Robin Walker said that when they were playtesting a huge portion of the final product, players had kind of a hard time understanding what the point was, so they knew they had to add a sort of guide, and more so, a villain. So they created exactly that, an overseer who helps you along in the beginning and then eventually pushes against your progress. I would say the final result is absolutely glorious. But to be honest, I think it's really Portal 2 where the character and her role as a villain become really interesting, nuanced, and timeless.
I'm torn into pieces.
So the sequel opens with you again, taking control of Chell, and being awoken every 50 days inside of your new prison. Long-term relaxation chamber, excuse me. So you get up, stretch, and lie back down, but something goes terribly wrong, and when you are awoken next, the amount of time elapsed is unknown. But you can be sure it's a long-ass time. Years and years and years. Some people even say thousands of years. So in Portal 2, same question. Where is GLaDOS? What is she up to? Well, technically she's dead because you killed her. And it's actually Wheatley, a sprightly little bastard who looks strangely similar to some of those personality cores, who wakes you up.
Please prepare for emergency evacuation.
Stay calm, stay calm, prepare. That's all I'm saying, prepare. It's all fine, alright? Don't move, I'm gonna get us out of here. Oh, you might want to hang on to something. Word of advice, up to you.
This guy becomes a huge character here in the sequel. He's a really charming little dickwad, I gotta admit. I like him. And together, you make your way through a decaying, overgrown aperture that has absolutely seen better days. And it's really cool to see those early test chambers from the original game, but all busted up. And then, before you know it, you are moseying past the broken body of what was once GLaDOS. Wheatley carefully guides you through and in an attempt to find an escape pod to a room full of switches. Well, of course, the little spitball bungles this shit up terribly and turns everything back on, including restoring power to you-know-who.
Uh-oh.
Power up initiated.
Okay, don't panic, alright? Stop panicking. I can still stop this. There's a password. Okay, it's fine. I'll just hack it. Not a problem. S. A-C. Wait, did I do B? Okay, start writing these down.
Power up complete.
I don't. Okay, listen. All right, new plan. Act natural. Done nothing wrong. Hello.
Oh, it's you.
You know her?
It's been a long time. How have you been? I've been really busy being dead. You know, after you murdered me.
You did what? Oh no! Oh no!
Okay, look, we both said a lot of things that you're going to regret. But I think we can put our differences behind us. For science, you monster. I will say, though, that since you went to all the trouble of waking me up, you must really love to test. I love it too. There's just one small thing we need to take care of first.
Now this is a great little reintroduction, but it's kind of unclear to me why she looks different. Pretty different, in fact. Now, of course, in real life, it's because they made a second game and kind of wanted to overhaul things, spruce up the designs, and make it a full-fledged experience here, you know? But in-game, I always think it's fun to try to justify things like this. So last time we saw her, she looked quite a bit flatter and was left up on the surface in the parking lot. So I think it's safe to say if Chell got dragged back down there, all those little backup cores and other bots around the place probably also retrieved her pieces and reassembled her here. So we can just say there was a new design involved too. I'd buy that, don't you? But this is immediately a more spiteful, bitter, and absolutely petty GLaDOS. She mentions that she saved herself by using a little bit of a quick save feature. So for the last X amount of years, again possibly thousands, she has been replaying the last few moments of her life over and over and over. So needless to say, she is delighted to see you. Now, of course, you know what this means. Back to the old grind, just like the glory days, gotta get those dopamine hits going for her again. But it's interesting to me how this character, being sort of a combination of human and machine, really sort of balances these things pretty well. Sure, she's bitter and upset, but she doesn't let it cloud her vision or execution much, like a machine. Her programming and purpose is still simply to test. She has to do it, and if anything, she seems to exude a sort of dark excitement, like a hungry predator finding her meal. It's a really neat characterization that I think is pulled off perfectly. And my good lord, GLaDOS is absolutely fucking hilarious in this game. It's insane. For this first section of Portal 2, she just roasts the absolute daylights out of Chell at the beginning and end of each of these chambers, calling you fat and stuff. I'm just gonna play some of my favorites for you now. Please enjoy these.
Here come the test results. You are a horrible person. That's what it says. A horrible person. We weren't even testing for that. Congratulations. Not on the test. Most people emerge from suspension terribly undernourished. I want to congratulate you on beating the odds and somehow managing to pack on a few pounds. Remember before when I was talking about smelly garbage standing around being useless? That was a metaphor. I was actually talking about you. I know that people with guilty consciences are more easily startled by loud noises. I'm sorry, I don't know why that went off. This next test does require some explanation. Let me give you the fast version. Let's give your parents a call right now.
The birth parents who are trying to reach do not love you. Please hang up.
I'm going to laminate your skeleton and pose you in the lobby. That way future generations can learn from you how not to have your unfortunate bone structure.
So all this time that you're back and you're sent through these chambers, GLaDOS is attempting to repair the facility a bit, clean things up, and wanting to restore it to its former glory. But it's clear that the place is in, well, I guess you could say ancient shape, and what was once pristine, coke white and pretty is now just a rust jungle. So stuck in the loop again, you must test. But slowly, Wheatley starts appearing again, damaged but not dead by any stretch. He's trying to reach you and help you out, wanting to escape together, but fearing GLaDOS' wrath, understandably. Until a moment presents itself and you are able to sleaze your way back into the long-forgotten back rooms of Aperture. Now here we get to find some really interesting lore nuggets. I mean, this is really the first time any sort of solid backstory is shown to the player across both games, and it hits pretty hard. You come across the remnants of the Bring Your Daughter to Work Day celebration, and fascinatingly, the most successful little potato of all the dumb battery projects belongs to a child named Chell. Holy shit, man. Don't worry, we'll talk about some theories at the very end. So the new plan involves disarming GLaDOS, and you've probably learned her two most favorite weapons are neurotoxin and turrets. So you throw a defective turret as the model in the factory, and then satisfyingly give a nice neurotoxin generator haircut, and just like that, bada bing, GLaDOS should be nothing more than a glorified gaming PC, and it's time to confront her yet again.
I honestly, truly didn't think you'd fall for that. In fact, I devised a much more elaborate trap further ahead for when you got through this easy one. If I'd I'd known you let yourself get captured this easily, I would have just dangled a turkey leg on a rope from the ceiling. Let's get to business. I hope you brought something stronger than a portal gun this time. Otherwise, I'm afraid you're about to become the immediate past president of the Being Alive Club.
I gotta say, GLaDOS is looking mighty fine here. I really think that's one of the main strengths that this villain has across both games visually. The manner in which she just hangs in this chamber. It gives her a real sense of power, a resonance of control and intimidation, and every time you come in here, you feel like a lowly meatbag tiptoeing into her lair to try and stop her. It's very effective design and extremely memorable. But in this meeting, when she's unable to use her usual means to intimidate, or in this case kill you, she realizes that, damn, she might be in a bad spot.
It's me they're talking about!
To initiate a core transfer, please deposit substitute core in receptacle.
Core transfer. Oh, you are kidding me.
But holy smokes, do we not understand how poorly this is about to go.
Stalemate resolved. Please return to the core transfer bay.
Here we go! Wait, what if this hurts? What if this really hurts? Oh, I didn't think of that.
Oh, it will. Believe me, it will.
Ah!
No, stop! No! 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 No!
Whoa! Would you look at this? Not too bad, eh? Giant robot. Massive. It's not just me right here. I am bloody massive, aren't I?
Of course, that damn Wheatley lets the power go to his head and turns completely into the villain himself, really for the rest of the game.
I did this. Tiny little Wheatley did this.
You didn't do anything. She did all the work.
Oh, really? That's what the two of you think, is it? Well, maybe it's time I did something then.
What are you doing? No! No! No!
See that? That is a potato battery. It's a toy for children. And now she lives in it.
It's then revealed that Wheatley is one of the cores designed for GLaDOS to keep her under control, namely an intelligence dampening core. I mean, my boy is literally built to be an idiot. Now, if that ain't built different, I don't know what is.
Now who's a moron? Could a moron hunt you into this pit? Ah! Could a moron do that? No.
But it is here, in her new spud form, where the character really shines the brightest.
Who are you holding up? Because I'm a potato. Oh, good. My slow clap processor made it into this thing. So we have that.
As you fall down into the ancient, sealed-off chambers of Aperture's heyday, you see her get grabbed by a bird and carried off, but don't worry, are able to find her sitting in that bird's nest. And the poor darling seems to have really developed a bit of a phobia. Now we have a wonderful, interesting, companion version of GLaDOS, stripped of her seat of dominance and with considerably less wattage. She offers really nice commentary, talks to you, and honestly softens up a lot. Now this is just my interpretation, but when she is in this state, this seems like Carolyn, or at least as close to her as we get in the series. Just as Wheatley is corrupted by the programming of the master system and now desires to test and act evil as hell, GLaDOS, when removed, reverts to a more normal state. She's funny, charming, and really at no point threatening to kill you or trick you. It's very interesting. Now down here, in the original Aperture test chambers, is where we finally get to learn all about Cave Johnson. It's his pre-recorded greetings for the old test subjects of the golden years that teach us about the history of the facility, the struggles against Black Mesa, the progression of his illness, and the plan to have Carolyn take his place.
Your test assignment will vary depending on the manner in which you have bent the world to your will. Those of you helping us test the repulsion gel today, just follow the blue line on the floor.
Needless to say, it's an extremely haunting experience to explore all these old wood-paneled lobbies and work areas amidst the rust and rock of what is surely an area miles below the surface. You progress from what seems to be the 50s era to the 60s, the 70s, with the nice Aperture logo redesign, and eventually, Potato GLaDOS takes note of Cave.
The testing area is just up ahead. The quicker you get through, the quicker you'll get your $60.
Hold on, who?
Carolyn, are the compensation vouchers ready?
Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson. Why did I just... Who is that? What the hell is going on here?
And even takes note of Carolyn.
Carolyn, why do I know this woman? Did I kill her? Or... Oh my god. Look, you're doing a great job. Can you handle things for yourself for a while? I need to think.
When life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade.
Yeah.
Make life take the lemons back.
Yeah.
Get mad!
Yeah.
I don't want your damn lemons! What am I supposed to do with these?
Yeah, take the lemons.
Demand to see life's manager.
Yeah.
Make life rue the day it thought it could give Cave Johnson lemons. Do you know who I am? I'm the man who's gonna burn your house down with the lemons.
Oh, I like this guy.
I'm gonna get my engineers to invent a combustible lemon that burns your house down.
Finding people. He says what we're all thinking.
All right, test's over. You can head on back to your desk.
Goodbye, sir.
It's a strange thing to witness, sort of sweetly sad, to be honest. But GLaDOS at this point feels less like a villain and more like a friend. All of that evil and attempts at murdering you feel like a lifetime ago, and she genuinely wants to work with you to take control back over the facility because, well, frankly, Wheatley's too goddamn stupid to be trusted, and all of you are gonna die if something isn't done. So after some pretty challenging goo-based puzzles, you at last get the hell out of the basement and work your way back up toward Wheatley and the Enrichment Center. But he is now in massive supervillain mode, and of course, because he's connected to the main system, has an overwhelming need to test. This is where we get some really interesting info regarding that urge, the itch.
I have to test all the time, or I get this itch. You know, it must be hardwired into the system or something. Oh, but I tell you, when I do test, oh man alive, nothing feels better. It's just that's why I've got to test. That's why I've got to test. So, you're gonna test, and I'm gonna watch.
So now in the home stretch of Portal 2, you have to complete Wheatley's shitty, poorly designed test chambers, and GLaDOS now talks shit solely to him instead of you, which is highly entertaining. And before long, the place really starts to fall apart in his, not-so-expert hands. Poor little guy. I mean, even though he turns evil, you can't help but feel bad for him, too. He's really just a sweet dingus who got given way too much juice in that new rig. But of course, he tries to kill you, saying that he doesn't need you anymore because he found some old robots to use for tests instead, and the final chase is on. Escaping and heading back for the final time to the central AI chamber, the finale awaits.
Well, welcome
To my lair.
Let me just flag something up. According to the control panel light up there, the entire building is going to self-destruct in about 6 minutes. I'm pretty sure it's a problem with the light. I think the light's on the blink, but just in case it isn't, I am actually going to have to kill you, as discussed earlier.
Warning. Core corruption at 50%. Warning. Core corruption at 75%. Warning. Core corruption at 100%. Manual core replacement required.
Oh, I see.
Substitute core. Are you ready to start? Corrupted core. Are you ready to start?
What do you think?
Interpreting vague answer as yes.
No. Don't press that button. Don't press it. Come to part 5. Booby trap the stalemate button. What? Are you still alive? You are joking. You have got to be kidding me. Well, I'm still in control, and I have no idea how to fix this place. Oh, you had to play bloody cat and mouse, didn't you? While people were trying to work. Space! Let go! We're in space! Let go! I'm still connected! I can pull myself in! I can still fix this!
I already fixed it. And you are not coming back.
Oh no! Change your plans! Hold on to me! Tighter! Grab me!
And would you look at that? It's GLaDOS lovingly and carefully pulling you back to safety and waiting patiently for you to recover. And when Chell finally awakens, GLaDOS is in quite the good mood, seems to have come to a place of peace regarding her longtime nemesis and part-time friend.
Oh, thank God, you're all right. You know, being Carolyn taught me a valuable lesson. I thought you were my greatest enemy, when all along you were my best friend. The surge of emotion that shot through me when I saved your life taught me an even more valuable lesson, where Carolyn lives in my brain.
Carolyn, deleted.
Goodbye, Carolyn. You know, deleting Carolyn just now taught me a valuable lesson. The best solution to a problem is usually the easiest one. And I'll be honest, killing you is hard. You know what my days used to be like? I just tested. Nobody murdered me, or put me in a potato, or fed me to birds. I had a pretty good life. And then you showed up, you dangerous, mute lunatic. So you know what? You win. Just go. It's been fun. Don't come back.
Of course, what would the end be without another beautiful original song or two? I mean, what a fantastic end to the game, and appropriate conclusion for GLaDOS and Chell. They really were never able to fully kill one another, but goddamn, they went back and forth like crazy. And at the end of it all, GLaDOS really just wants you gone so she can get back to it. And although there is a hint of kindness, I kinda feel like she never really changed. But it ain't over yet. With her best frenemy gone, GLaDOS returned her attention to a little project that she had been working on, the Cooperative Testing initiative. This involved using robots instead of humans for her testing purposes, seeing as all the meatbags were now dead and gone. It was the only option to have her eternal itch scratched. But unfortunately, she slowly grew bored, as robots would just be rebuilt after death, and she missed witnessing the fear and terror of the good old days. Who wouldn't, man? I feel it. She sent them on a quest, until at last, Atlas and Peabody find the jackpot, baby, an entire sealed-off vault of human test subjects perfectly preserved and ready for death. With that, the robots are disposed of, and GLaDOS relapses big time. What a rush that must have been for her. So really, our final piece of the GLaDOS puzzle is the co-op DLC that was added later on called Peer Review. Here, GLaDOS states that 100,000 years have passed, and all those humans they found in the vault are alive and happy. But in reality, it's been a week, and she already killed all of them on behalf of science. But a concerning issue has forced her to call again on Atlas and Peabody. There is an unknown intruder deep within Aperture messing with an early GLaDOS prototype, and she wants you to go figure it out. Turns out it's just a goddamn bird. Oh, God. And GLaDOS wants it destroyed, including the eggs. But in a last-moment change of heart, decides to raise the little buggers, conquering her fears and showing that maybe, just maybe, Carolyn isn't fully gone. Simply wonderful. Alright, so first off, I just gotta say how much I obviously adore this character. I think of all the villains I have covered to this point, she has the best writing, by far, the funniest dialogue, and the most interesting in-game portrayal. I usually don't go step by step through the whole game like that for a villain, but for GLaDOS, you really have to see her progression and all that humor. Now, I would say one of the most intriguing things the character says ever is right at the end there, that she located Carolyn and then promptly deletes her. That really makes me think, like I mentioned earlier, that any hint of the human that remained was buried deep within the machine, still maybe influencing decisions or personality traits, but not remotely in control of GLaDOS the way the project was probably planned. But do you think she really deleted her? For some reason, I'm not so sure about that. Now, listen to my theory. Gather around, children, gather around. So the GLaDOS project was something being built specifically for Cave Johnson, right? In fact, it was being rushed to attempt to finish before his death, something that didn't work out. Now let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it was 85% completed when Cave died, and then that last 15% was under the posthumous order for Carolyn to take his place. We know that both GLaDOS, or Carolyn, and Wheatley are subjected to an overwhelming urge and need to test when they're hooked up to the main system. This instantly causes both of them to go mad, needing to practice science in this exact form or else. But really quick, look at the man that Cave Johnson was. It was him and his insane malice that led to the entirety of Aperture existing. His lack of care for human life, desire for progress, knowledge, and advancement, his ego, really, made him feel like a failure if he and his company was not number one. So if they were constructing a computer to put that personality into, it makes a lot of sense to me anyway, to make the programming compatible with those tendencies, right? Perhaps, I'm just saying, this is a system that only Cave Johnson would have been able to run without losing his mind, because in many ways, he kind of already had lost it. I would go so far as to theorize that the main villain of Portal is the system. I guess you could still call that GLaDOS, but it's really the entire thing. The brain of the company is inherently ruthless, cold, and evil, just like its founder. Carolyn being who she was and having such a vital role in the completion of the project obviously gives us the villain that we end up with, but theoretically, and Wheatley sort of proves this, it could have been anyone. It is the throne that is corrupt, not the queen. Now, as we always do in these videos, we gotta ask why our villains did not prevail. What weaknesses were there for the hero to exploit? What oversights led to their demise? Well, GLaDOS is rather interesting to me in this regard, because if you ask me, many of her failures can simply be attributed to Chell. Chell is exceptional. Where other test subjects break down, give up, or straight up die, she pushes through the hardest tasks thrown at her. Now, I personally have always thought of this as a little bit of a commentary on video game design itself, yet again, that the player always has to be something special. If not, some NPC test subject could just do what we did. Then the game wouldn't even occur, would it? Also remember that this is a puzzle game, and at times, a kind of tough one. So Chell, being seen as an unstoppable, strong, smart, and tenacious person that overcomes the killing machine, is a little wink at you. You have overcome this machine as well, and you're special. Woohoo! Not to mention, and I really like this aspect of it too, we are a tool-using primate. GLaDOS, at the end of the day, is a machine with programming and assignments built into her. With a powerful weapon like the portal gun, a human who is able to think critically about what they're doing and why, can assess, change tactics, and improvise. But also, within the narrative, the first domino to fall is Doug Ratman. There is an awesome little official comic I will throw in the description below called Lab Rat, and in it, we see Doug as one of the scientists working on the morality core meant to control GLaDOS way back in the day. He is able to survive that initial neurotoxin attack, and once he escapes, actually alters the test subject master list to put Chell at the very top. And on the last frame, we see Doug taking refuge in a relaxation chamber and Chell's exceptional level of tenacity when compared with the other test subjects. So, from a certain point of view, it's little old Doug who is the one responsible for stopping GLaDOS the moment he sets us loose in the test chambers. Now, of course, this is Ghost Charm, baby. We gotta mention a theory. Now, if you're a longtime fan of these games, you probably know where I'm going with this. The hugely popular theory that Chell is the daughter of Cave Johnson and Carolyn. Now this was once a fringe idea, but over the years since Portal 2 has come out, more and more details point to this being a very possible and even implied connection between the characters. And I gotta admit, there are some pretty compelling pieces of evidence, and they are as follows. Number 1. At the very end of Portal 2, that beautiful song that is sung to you by the turrets actually has lyrics, and they are in Italian. Now listen, I'll admit, it's pretty interesting and pretty sweet too. Number 2 is that famous Easter egg portrait of Cave and Carolyn. In the background on the left side is a strange face hidden in the darkness. Now, this seems to be a child. Many point to this and say that's gotta be Chell, but who can say for sure? Number 3, we mentioned this earlier, the Chell potato at Bring Your Daughter to Work Day. Her parents had to have worked at Aperture, or at least one of them, for her to participate, of course. And she seems to have had a significantly stronger potato. So if Cave was her father, I'm sure he wouldn't mind helping the little tyke cheat to win, right? That's his style, slipping her some growth hormone to shake on that spud. Something along those lines is certainly possible. And finally, the potato GLaDOS mentions at one point that Chell is adopted, and really has no reason to lie at this point in the game, meaning that she has some intimate knowledge about her origin. Also, the melancholy tone in which she shares this information has had many people scratching their heads since the game came out. Now, this theory, of course, is firmly rooted in things that Valve wanted us to try to connect. I mean, this is the developer that created a massively complicated ARG when Portal 2 was coming out. I would say they know exactly what they're doing when it comes to stuff like this. So, if you believe this theory, good on you, more power to you. But allow me now to offer counter information to each of those points of evidence. The song at the end certainly has a maternal quality in the lyrics, but to me, it seems more like a motherly love that GLaDOS has developed for her test subject. Think about it. In a way, a subject that has never failed would be like her greatest nightmare and her most prized child. It doesn't have to literally mean, hey, by the way, on the way out, I'm your mom. See you later. Next, the portrait. Well, I have news for you, my friend. This is absolutely not Chell, but in fact, a separate Easter egg altogether. So this face here is Aeschylus, an ancient Greek writer known as the founder of tragedy. Okay, I admit this branches out to other theories and kind of crazy stuff, but Portal 2 has an undeniable undercurrent of Greek mythology. And Aeschylus is the author of a famous dramatic work known as Prometheus Bound. Prometheus being the titan that defies his god Zeus. Well, in Portal, GLaDOS can be considered to take on the role of Prometheus. In that legend, Prometheus attempts to share knowledge with mankind, but was punished by being cast down into the underbelly of Earth, being diminished in power, and getting pecked by birds. It's not super overt, and it's a bit imperfect, I admit, but there's another Easter egg of an oracle turret which confirms this sort of connection. So the portrait Easter egg is meant to simply be a shout out to anyone who possibly connected those dots themselves and happened to know what Aeschylus looked like in that painting. It's pretty nuts. So back to our list, the Chell Potato Project. Now this one, I'm not so sure, but I like the idea of her parents just being random employees at Aperture who were killed by the neurotoxin, and the strength of the potato being due to Chell's inherent tenacity that makes her such a great subject later on. Then, as a kid, was simply stashed for later testing. And finally, the adoption thing. Well, I don't think it's far-fetched to say that GLaDOS has every ounce of information at her fingertips regarding all of her test subjects, right? Maybe in her potato moment of vulnerability, she was simply trying to connect with Chell in an awkward way. Listen, I'm not saying the theory's wrong, and I'm not saying it's right, but Valve, the sons of bitches, sure make it fun for people to talk about it going on over a decade now. Okay, I'm glad I got that all out of my system, sheesh. Oh man, this has been a pretty long video, hasn't it? Whoops. Well, to be honest, this is kind of an odd villain for me to have a look at in this format, considering she was created as a character for Portal 1, but was rather simplistic, but effective, and then with the sequel was expanded to an absurd degree, with a really interesting backstory, tragic origin, the history regarding the entire facility, Cave Johnson, and everything else. But I would say it's rather impressive how expertly they expanded GLaDOS into what she would finally be. Now, needless to say, GLaDOS has had a substantial cultural impact in the years that followed this series, spawning shoutouts in other games like Fallout 3, and herself even appearing in the LEGO Dimensions multiple times. All of that praise is appropriate, given that GLaDOS was originally inspired by those that came before her in fiction. Characters like Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey, as well as Shodan from the System Shock series. I really think rogue artificial intelligence is always going to be one of the most compelling antagonists in human stories now, and especially into the future. There's something primal in the fear that it strikes in us, machines that we made surpassing us in intelligence and ability. It's timeless, really, and hopefully remains completely fictional. But if you remember, an hour ago in the intro to this video, I talked about the structure of video games and trial and error, all that stuff. And I really think that that is also one of the major strengths of the writing and the design going on with this character. I mean, these are legitimately incredible games. The linearity of going from test to test and building your knowledge base of the various obstacles until you're really challenged towards the end, it's extremely rewarding stuff. And it's so cool to me that the antagonist is exploiting that very structure for her dark enjoyment. I would even say she could be considered commentary on us, the players of games. Now again, bear with me here, but when I'm playing, Super Meat Boy, I have kind of a detachment from the little meat man himself. To me, he isn't real, he isn't alive, he's simply the vehicle to my understanding the game and its mechanics more. I don't care if he dies, is ground into putty, or falls to an unthinkable splat. Next subject, please. I'm trying to conduct science here for the sake of dopamine hits in my brain when I succeed, goddammit. So it's with confidence that I conclude GLaDOS is a gamer. But of all the things that make this character up, the most memorable aspect of GLaDOS and what sets her apart from others like her is that touch of humor. The writing overall is spectacular in Portal, but man, the humor across the board streaming out of GLaDOS really lands for me. I think it's universal. It's absolutely perfectly timed and appropriately clunky coming from such a voice. It's really what elevates the tone from scary computer to something truly unique and lovable. GLaDOS is a tragic character, a being that never asked to be powered on in the first place. A horrible union of human and computer, the final act of an egomaniac and the sacrifice of his lovely assistant, with an insatiable desire to capture, to kill, to manipulate, to torture, to test, and test, and test. What becomes of her after Portal 2 is largely unknown. Maybe her newfound bird children give her a sense of purpose, new pleasure to replace her need to test, but I have a feeling it's back to the same old routine. So if you ever wake up in a relaxation chamber to the sound of a cold, robotic voice, get ready for hell. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching and listening to the end. As always, it means a lot. I probably took on a little more than I anticipated making this video right after a very relaxing vacation, but hey, what are you gonna do? I seriously can't put into words how grateful I am to hit that big 100K milestone, and it's all because of people just like you, clicking on my videos and sticking around. I have several more projects I'm working on here for the next month or so, and I look forward to sharing them all with you. Remember to let me know down below other video game characters or universes you want to see explored, analyzed, and I'll see you all very soon. Until next time, peace.